I know a lot of people really irritated about this, but when you look at it from the big picture, you did get like talents, like players or upgrades in most of those instances. And I think that'll continue to pan out. I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championships. The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me for an emergency recruiting style pod, I guess. I mean, it's like most of these are good news. This one's not. Can a guy get a day off, man? Can I get a couple of minutes off, for crying out loud? Elbert Rock Hill out of Akron, Hoban. The streets out here saying my city has been compromised, which means I got to face the music. Rock Hill going to USC to play for Danton Lynn and Lincoln Riley. Are you kidding me? A kid from Akron's going to USC, man. I never thought I'd see the day. Immediately, obviously, this brings up some questions. It brings up three to me. Like, number one, what's it mean for Ohio State's class of 2026? Number two, how does this happen? What's it mean for in-state recruiting? As now in two cycles, we have seen Oregon times two guys, USC, Penn State, Alabama, Texas A&M, Missouri, Miami, and Clemson all come into the great state of Ohio and take out a player that Ohio State was after. And I don't mean a loose offer. I mean after. Notice I didn't include Notre Dame in there with Jacoby Clapper because he had an offer. Matter of fact, he got his offer before Laurinaitis, before Sincere Johnson and Storm Miller, but he wasn't really after him. So we're just talking about guys Ohio State was after. That's a lot of dudes, man. That's a lot of dudes. And number three, USC. What's the recruiting situation in the Big Ten? As USC now with the number one class, 10 top 100 kids in that class. 10 top 100 kids. We look back at Ohio State 2021, a legendary Ohio State class, 7 5-stars. That class had 12 top 100 kids. USC's got 10 already. Now, I don't think they're all going to stick, but a lot of them will. But question number one, what's it mean for the class of 2026? Every coach goes about this differently. Tim Walton doesn't work off a big board. Usually doesn't have a ton of options, and it works fine for him. He tries to find his favorites. He locks in on them. And since he's been at Ohio State, he landed Jermaine Matthews and Calvin Simpson-Hunt, then 5-star Aaron Scott and Bryce West, then 5-star Devin Sanchez, and the forgotten man, Jordan Woods, who he flipped from Cincinnati when things started looking a little sketchy with Naeem offered. Thankfully, he got Jordan Woods in here, who's not arrived yet. He's not an early enrollee, but he's a prospect that was pretty lowly rated, but I think he's got a lot to offer. He's a hell of a project, huge kid. But ultimately with Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez, Walt's got 2 5-stars in 3 cycles. And everybody else outside of Jordan Woods is a top 200 guy. And that's pretty damn good, bud. Pretty damn good. But this week, 2 of the guys that were targets for Walt went off the board. Obviously, Albert Hill to USC. And we talked earlier this week about Havon Finney. Havon Finney pulled a little rope-a-dope saying he was going to announce his final 3 and surprise committed to LSU. So what does Walt's board look like now? Well, you've got 1 committed in Jacob Weatherspoon. Jacob Weatherspoon from Avon. And the Spoon Man is awesome. Love Spoon. He was all in on the Buckeyes right from the start, which is when we talk about guys leaving, you got to make sure you show the love to the ones who really want to be Buckeyes. And Spoon did. So shout out Jacob Weatherspoon, top 200 guy, hits like a truck, plays safety, plays corner. He'll be a corner at Ohio State, and really versatile guy. Got a lot of skills. Jordan Thomas is the number 1 guy on the board now, but I don't think he's just the number 1 guy on the board now for Walt. I think he was the number 1 guy on the board before today's news. That's just the way it's felt from these 2 recruitments. It doesn't look like that in the rankings, but that's the way it's felt to me. Jordan Thomas from Bergen Catholic, Quincy Porter's teammate last year, great character kid, really versatile, great ball skills, big hitter, never got a B in his life, never in his life. Midwest recruit, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, all involved, but it's felt for a while like Ohio State leads this one. And if Walt's able to land him, with him and Jacob Weatherspoon, it's two top 200 guys. Not going to make anybody go crazy, but certainly he'll be after a third as well. And if you can snag another one, which could include any of Nasir McCoy out of Buford, top 300 guy, 6'2", 185, pretty solid player. Peyton Dyer, also on the board. I don't think it's very likely, but 6 foot 190 out of Duluth, Georgia. He was committed to South Carolina, recently decommitted. And it looks like Penn State's hopped in early. Georgia's hopped in, trying to get in there. We'll see if there's any movement on that. But the exciting one here left is Justice Fitzpatrick. This is Minka Fitzpatrick's little brother. We took a look at his film last week. He's awesome. Goes to St. Thomas Aquinas. That's the Boses High School down in Fort Lauderdale. 4-star, top 50 player in the country. Came up and visited Ohio State for the first time not too long ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. Seemed like he really, really liked it, and I think it's piqued his interest. So, because there are so few options, I suspect the heat gets turned way up on Fitzpatrick. So, Jordan Thomas, number one priority right now. Got to make sure you get Jordan Thomas. If you do, it's all good in the hood. Not a huge impact. All right, it's a pretty big impact. It depends on how you feel about Hill. There's a lot of people who, because of his size, don't feel great about him. I feel like he's a fantastic impact type of player. That's my thoughts on him. He effort guy. He plays with a chip on his shoulder because he's a little smaller, and he's got great coverage skills. Got the right attitude. There is a natural tendency we tend to have with guys that don't choose Ohio State, particularly ones from Ohio, to then say, oh, he wasn't that good anyway. I get it. I do it sometimes. But I got to check myself. Yeah. He's a really, really good player, and USC's getting a good one. Now, we talked going into this recruiting cycle, what a layup of all the coaches Tim Walton had, with Vic Singleton being at Toledo Central Catholic, Rock Hill being at Hoban, and Jacoby Clapper being at Avon. And we're not talking just 3 Ohio State caliber offers. We're talking 3 studs, 3 recruits that anybody would want around the country. And you had them all 3 right here in the state. And it looked like a layup. You just had Eli Lee commit from Hoban, his teammate, Rock's teammate. You just had Sam Greer commit in Rock's class. Things looking really good. Well, Vic Hill abandons you quit, pretty early on in the cycle, commits to Illinois. But Ohio State wasn't really 100% sold on him. He wasn't at the top of this board. Spoon, Rock Hill, Rock was definitely at the top. And today, he's gone to USC. Now, losing players from Ohio, particularly from my city, irritates me more than anything. I have a great sense of pride about keeping the Ohio in Ohio State. Like, I love when all things are even, always you go with the Ohio State player. I hate when Ohio State takes projecty kids, 3-star kids that aren't from Ohio. We got plenty of those here. Take one from Ohio. This is something I'm big about, and I always have been. And I understand not everybody cares too much about it. There are a lot of us who do. And in this particular recruitment, it was kind of strange. There was some back and forth recently on social media that it just looked like a bad situation. But Rock's dad made a post about fans wanting players to stay home. Then they bash the players or something to that effect. And to be honest, it's something he's felt for a while. But then he said it on Twitter. And a lot of people had some things to say about that. Like, Twitter isn't real life. 100 idiots on Twitter don't make a fan base. Some saying really rude things. If you're bothered by Twitter, then you're not cut out to be at Ohio State. But a lot of people got mixed up and thought that it was actually the player's account. It was his dad. They're both Elbert. Dad's Elbert III. So they thought that it was, the player's account, which I don't really like people commenting on players' accounts anyway. I think that's just silly. We're talking about minors here, right? Like, literally minors. But anyway, I cover a lot of recruiting. Because of the growth of the show, I've been fortunate enough to make a lot of contacts in the recruiting industry, and I'm able to talk to a lot of recruits, talk to a lot of parents. If they commit to Ohio State, I even bring them on the show. But this one in particular, I had a really open line of communication throughout. The negativity, I don't think, ever really came until he put out his final 4 official visits. He put out his 4 official visits USC, Alabama, Oregon, and LSU. Ohio State wasn't on there. And when that came out, things got pretty negative. And, you know, I can certainly understand why that would irritate you as a parent. I can also understand people saying, like, you know, we're talking about a very, very small portion of the Ohio State fan base who is vocal on Twitter in a negative way. And, you know, I get it. Whatever. It is what it is. I don't think that had a whole lot to do with this. I think that this had a couple of reasons here. Like, one, we're in a different era with these kids in the state of Ohio. I've been saying this since I started the show, that we're about to see a lot of kids leave the state of Ohio that we otherwise would never have thought would have left it. That was before the class of 2025 committed. I was saying that, and we've certainly seen it come true. And the reason for that is now you've introduced money. Ohio and Louisiana used to be the two hardest states to pull recruits out of. People wouldn't even try. And you'd have maybe the top 2 or 3 recruits in the state of Ohio that would be national level recruits. Now we can go down the board, and we will. And you're talking like sometimes guys ranked number 15 or 13 in Ohio, like, are being pursued by Clemson and Bama and Missouri. And they might have, you know, they might be guys Ohio State wants. And otherwise, like before, that would not have been the case. But now when you enter in the money gets the foot in the door. And now people are more bold to come take their shot. And now they've seen proof of concept. Yeah, you can now with the extra enticement, get these kids to leave the state of Ohio. And we're seeing it a lot, but it's not just money. It's also these kids. They're not like me and you, man. It's in 1997, if I'd have gone out to USC, like there were long distance bills, like I'd have been writing my parents letters, right? Now you can FaceTime all day. These kids are so much more familiar with all these other programs. They've been watching all the kids above them in the classes above them put out their top 10 and then their top 4. They have more relationships with all these different coaches from camps and 7-on-7. It's just so small to them now, where that USC might as well have been China to me when I was, you know, a junior in high school. It's not like that for them. They can take a tour of the facilities everywhere in the country on their phone. Like, everything feels so much smaller, and leaving the state doesn't seem like such a big deal. And when you add in the money, and now they're coming, everybody's coming into Ohio trying to get hey, number 5 in the country when it comes to high level talent this year, a very talent rich state with only one person to compete with for that top talent in the state. That's Ohio. That's why it's always been so difficult for them to come in and get players out of Ohio, just like Louisiana with LSU. There's only one you got to compete with, but that one owns the state. Well, if you can get someone to sour on that one, or that one doesn't do a great job in the recruitment, which, look, I'm a loyal to the soil Buckeye, baby. I got to tell you, I'm disappointed in this one. I'm disappointed in it. When you look at how, and again, I know what went on with this one, like more than most. When you look at how Alabama and Oregon and SC late, they came to the table late, end up winning it. How they came at this recruitment, it was tens. It was on 10 the whole time. The pressure, the communication, everything. In Ohio State wasn't. And I kept thinking at some point they're going to turn it up. Now, here's where everybody's going to say, look, I don't care. I want a kid that wants to be a Buckeye, and I get it. But if you flip the shoe around and you look at it from the player's standpoint, that could make you think a couple of things, right? You could think, one, they just think I'm a layup, and that doesn't feel too good. Or you could think, maybe they don't actually want me as much as they're saying they do. And if that's the case, maybe they don't really see me fitting in or playing early or any of those things. These are the kind of things you have to think about when you're making a commitment for the next 4 years of your life that we don't have to think about, right? We just say, and by the way, the reason that people stick out like Tavian St. Clair, guys that never flirted elsewhere, guys that just wanted to be a Buckeye, the reason we talk about that is because it's rare. We can go down the list and look at all these guys committed in 25. They didn't just say, I want to be a Buckeye as soon as they got their offer, and that was it. Sam Greer was going visiting places. Max Riley was leaning towards Clemson. Like, these guys eventually wanted to be a Buckeye, but Ohio State had to communicate to them just why they wanted to be a Buckeye and why that was so important that they are Buckeyes. So the recruiter always holds some responsibility when you lose a recruit, especially if you know that the recruiter has it in them to get pretty much whatever they want done. Ohio State, I was waiting for them to turn it up to 10, and it seemed like they finally were. Last Thursday, they went to the house, and you saw the official visit get scheduled at Ohio State, and it was like, okay, here we go. Hope it's not too late. Turns out it was, man. Turns out it was. So, there's some blame to spread around here in my book. That's just the way I look at it. But I understand everybody's mad, and some people are going to be mad that I even say that. Like, I get it. It's very bothersome, man. I hate it. I hate this new world. I'm holding out hope, though, because I'll tell you why. With the new rules coming into place, with the $20.5 million in revenue share, I think we're going to see less pay-for-play deals trying to get kids out of high school. They're always going to try to find loopholes, but it's going to be less, and I think that means we see less people coming in, taking swings at some of our best recruits. But when we look at the number of players that Ohio State has missed out on out of the state of Ohio, you look at guys that could have had an impact, right? Justin Hill in 2025 goes to Alabama. Trey McNutt goes to Oregon. Chaz Coleman goes to Penn State. Marquise Davis goes to Missouri. Luka Gilbert was an early Keenan Bailey offer. He goes to Miami. 2026, you got Albert Hill, Caden Gephardt out of Olentangy, Storm Miller, Adam Guthrie, Jacoby Clapper, but James wasn't really in on him. He offered him before Sincere Johnson, actually, but he was kind of always a Notre Dame lean, and James wasn't really, pushing for that one. But how many of these guys would have had a big impact? If I look at Justin Hill, who went to Alabama, there was no replacement for him. There was no replacement. You lost an excellent football player who I think is going to be an impact college football player. You got nothing in return. As far as Trey McNutt goes, he goes to Oregon as they try to plant their flag in the Midwest, and that starts in Ohio, obviously. Ended up with Ohio State's number one safety on the board, Fahim Delane. And as a recruiter, on signing day, I judge a recruiter, Matt Guerrieri in this instance, by does he get his top guys on his board? Well, Fahim Delane was his number one. And then in a couple years, we can judge how did he do on the evaluation. Should Fahim Delane have been his number one? I feel good about it. So that's a wash for me as far as losing out on him. Chaz Coleman, Penn State was a late offer right before you got Epi Satanile. Is that a 1-for-1? Maybe. I think Chaz Coleman's going to be a heck of a football player, but we'll see. Marquise Davis to Missouri, originally Kentucky, whatever. We're good on the running backs. That wasn't a big loss. Luka Gilbert to Miami, whatever. Same type deal. Love Brody Lennon and Nate Roberts, so that's all good. In 2026, Vic Singleton goes to Illinois or commits to Illinois, then Texas A&M. We'll see how big of a loss him and Elbert Hill end up being by how this class finishes. But those are two impact players. So far, you got nobody in return. Caden Gephardt, love the player. He ends up going to Clemson, but you end up getting Blaine Bradford, the number one safety in the country, who plays a very similar style game to Gephardt, just better, more elite. So you upgraded there. Storm Miller goes to Texas A&M. That's a guy James Laurinaitis really liked, really wanted. We'll see how that turns out. I think CJ Sana and Sincere Johnson are both better football players and better fits at Ohio State and are both going to stay in the linebacker room. I think that Storm Miller might end up dropping down. So we'll see what happens there, who that third guy is that Laurinaitis gets, should he be able to get Sincere. Adam Guthrie goes to Clemson. I have 100% confidence that Tyler Bowen is going to get us an upgrade there. So not a huge deal there. So when we look at all that, yeah, you lost a lot of guys. Ultimately, Ohio State was able to replace every single one of them with a comparable player or a better player in almost every instance. But when you're looking at two even Steven players, I want the Ohio kid because he provides the intangibles that out-of-state guy does not. Ohio players The more we have at Ohio State, the better off we are. That's a fact. We all know it. We look at last year's team, you had a lot of Ohio guys. Your starters don't need to be from Ohio. You didn't have many last year. I wish you had more. I think, on the defense, you had Sonny, Ty Hamilton, Jack Sawyer. On the offense, you had Tegra. Not a lot. You didn't have a lot in your starting lineup. But, that's where we're at in the state of Ohio recruiting when it comes to, I know a lot of people really irritated about this, but, when you look at it from the big picture, you did get like talents, like players or upgrades in most of those instances. And I think that'll continue to pan out. But it is a blow for those of us who, when things are even, would prefer to see an Ohio guy there. And Ryan Day talks about those Ohio guys, just talked about it in his interview with Pate the other day, setting the tone. Those Ohio guys are there to teach everybody what it is about to be a Buckeye. But then if you got a guy who's going to leave the state, is he really the kind of guy you would want teaching? It is what it is, whatever. But it's just different. So everybody's going to be super irritated about it right now. The question is, does it get reined back in? Does it get reined back in when we see the new rules come into place, right? You got the $20.5 million coming in. They could spend that however they want. Now the deals got to go through the clearinghouse if it is from a company that is affiliated with the school. Anything over $600 is going to be vetted. Got to be fair market. What does this do to recruiting enticements? And does this make it less likely that some of these schools are able to even get their foot in the door on some of these Ohio kids? We'll see. I still think we'll see more of it than we ever have, prior to 2 years ago. But I think it might be a little less. I'm hoping it reverses trend a little bit. All right. Now, let's talk about USC for a second. Recently, I've been talking about the Big Ten. Matter of fact, just in this morning's show, about how much better the Big Ten is now, how exciting it is now. It's not just excitement and drama and storylines and coaches, but we're seeing now USC really surge in recruiting. We're seeing Michigan surge in recruiting, not yet this class, but I fully believe they'll be there. And I think we're now going to have a conference where it's not just Ohio State that lives in the top 10, but I think we're going to have 4 programs annually living in the top 10 in the recruiting rankings, with Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan and USC. And this is obviously a huge change in the landscape of the conference that we play in. USC currently with the number 1 class, 10 top 100 guys. That is huge, and they're not done. They're going to keep going. They're trying to have a huge class, a record-setting class number-wise, which tells us they're trying to filter out a lot of not-so-talented guys there and bring in more talented guys and start kind of rebuilding that roster. So in doing so, they're attempting to lock down the state of California. They're doing a real good job so far. Well, Oregon has owned the top talent in California since even before Dan Lanning got there. I think this puts a pretty decent ding in Oregon's recruiting base, because keep in mind, if we're not dealing, or if it's tougher to get the pay for play deals in with the new system, and we think it will be, Oregon has always had to pay a premium to get guys to travel up there because it's so hard. You want guys to come to Oregon, they tried to level the playing field with money, because that distance for a lot of people is just too much to deal with. They did it with money. They're able to do it with money. And I've never knocked them for it, because if I was an Oregon fan, I would want them to do the same thing. And I would feel justified that that's the only way we could level the playing field. Though I would say, we should probably produce more talent ourselves on our own soil, which is why Ohio State's always going to be good, providing you lock down the Ohio kids. But California talent has been down as it is. So there's just not enough now high-level talent to split up between the two of them. We talked about their talent recently, and they're just above the state of Ohio. The type of talent that Oregon and USC are after, there's just not enough numbers to go around in the state of Ohio. And obviously Oregon's supplementing all over the country, but you still had a good nut of California to make up that ground, and West Coasters in general, Washington, everywhere. If USC is now going to be competing and splitting those guys, it makes things tougher on them. So USC comes up, Oregon comes down. What would we rather deal with? Two really good teams or one great team? I'll take the two really good teams. Ultimately, I think that's probably a good thing. But the next 4 years or so, think back to Oregon's roster last year that wasn't quite up to Ohio State's level, right? It was damn close. Well, you look at Michigan, who started with the class of 2025 with a great class last year. I loved their class last year. Oregon's now had 3 really, really good classes in a row. USC, this is their first. If we fast forward a couple of years, Michigan and USC and Oregon are all going to have rosters that look similar to Ohio State's. Maybe not quite as good, but doggone good. Good enough and capable enough to beat Ohio State if they're not on their P's and Q's. I just think the whole Big Ten is, looking back just 4 or 5 years ago, when we could look at the schedule at the beginning of the year. When's Penn State? When's the game? And who's that third game that's going to be a challenge in the Big Ten? A team that's on the up and up, whoever that was that year. And we're going to be looking at this schedule now coming up, and it's going to be like, instead of 2 big games and maybe 1 kind of iffy game, like 5 big games. The competition has gone way up. It's going to be so much more fun. It's going to be so much harder. I don't think it's a bad thing. Because I've thought for a long time that oftentimes Ohio State goes into the postseason having not been tested enough throughout the season, having not had enough adversity, and having some more big-time games. And now that you got a couple mulligans to still make the playoffs, and who knows how much that playoff keeps expanding. I think we'll see 16 soon enough. And if you're at 16 and you're a brand name like Ohio State, that's essentially, man, you could have a 3-loss season and you're in every year. But at any rate, things are changing. It's fun. I love it. I love being a Buckeye, and I love you guys. It's your friend Juck. I'm out of here. I'll talk to you on Sunday at 3. Caden Dixon-White announcement. We'll talk some more of this. I'll bring your comments up. We'll juck around for a while. Check out my new Andy Katzenmoyer jersey. Who loves it? I love it. Really happy about that. Not sure where to put it yet. I was thinking I was going to put it in this Boza spot here because I don't like that Boza jersey. Not that I don't like Boza. I just don't like that particular jersey. It's kind of a cheap knockoffy jersey. So I was thinking up there, but that kind of is hidden over there. I don't know. If you guys got a favorite spot you'd like to see it, let me know. At any rate, I'll talk to you soon. Juggabucks out.